Hey everyone, and welcome to the Rumcast. We are the podcast that talks all things rum related with the people who love and shape it. My name is John Gulla, and with me to help lead us through another installment of the Rumcast is the one, the only Will Hookinga. And Will, we have a great episode lined up today for you all with a name that maybe needs little to no introduction for most rum geeks. Mr. Ben Jones, director of Spiribam for North America, who oversees well-known brands such as Rhum Clément and Rhum J.M from Martinique, Chairman's Reserve from St. Lucia Distillers, and others, as well as a few other distilleries we're going to talk about in the interview. But first, Will, I know we received a lot of interesting and fun feedback from our most recent episode, and I know you wanted to share some of that.
We did, yeah. So great episode coming up, interview coming up. But before we get to that, wanted to go back to our previous episode, our epic blind Foursquare tasting. As expected, prompted some passionate reactions out there, all of which were positive, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't think we didn't have people calling us frauds for rating Old Brigand so high. Spoiler alert if you haven't listened to it yet, but I wanted to share a few reaction emails that we got, one of which came from Josh in Philly. He also posted this on Facebook, so you may have seen it there if you follow the Rumcast on Facebook. But Josh went out of his way to create a spreadsheet that took the scores that John and I came up with for all 10 of those Foursquare rums and used a what he calls a price performance ratio. He took the average prices of each bottle and then used this ratio formula, whatever it is. I don't know how all of the math works behind it.
A function.
A function.
No,
yeah.
I have no idea. It's a quadratic equation.
Exactly. It's there's sine and cosine, all kinds of terminology I haven't used since 11th grade coming out right now. But anyway, the goal was to come up with like which is the most bang for the buck based on the average price and our average scores of each rum. And what came out on top, and I honestly forgot this rum was this cheap, but Aline Arthur came out on top in this calculation because our average score was a 7.5 out of 10. You gave it an 8, I gave it a 7, but it's priced at only $14 on average. So it came out with the highest price performance ratio, just edging out Old Brigand, which came in second. So I think you and I both had that kind of reaction when we were tasting through, like, wow, we were really blown away with Old Brigand, but Aline Arthur was also in there as like, man, for how cheap that rum is, that's pretty amazing. So it was fun to see that backed up by the math. We were going off just our blind instincts, but now we have the math to back that up. So although I guess our blind scores factor into that math, so we're still influencing them to some degree. But I thought that was fun and wanted to give Josh a shout out for putting that together.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. QED. It's done.
QED? What is that?
You're not familiar with QED, Will?
No.
Quod erat demonstratum.
Oh, is that Latin?
It is Latin, but it's
I'm really
like
bad
something,
with Latin.
Okay, like I'm not a mathematician, or either. So I believe it means that when you can prove something, like in a demonstrable way, like with mathematics, you say QED at the end.
Okay.
Of it. Now I'm gonna look really stupid because there's plenty of people out there who know more about that than I do, but I'm pretty sure that's close. So
well, you
tell me how
sounded smart for using it, but I didn't know what it meant, so I had to ask you what it meant, and then that revealed that maybe you're not so smart after all. So
I'm like a 7 out of 10 on it. I don't know.
Well, one other note we got I wanted to share. Mark from Atlanta wrote in and said he was delighted with our results. He wrote, "You see, a dozen years or so ago, when I had less disposable income and much less knowledge, I endeavored to find the best of the cheapest spirits. I soon alighted on Old Brigand, my introduction to Bayesian rum and to sipping rum. Since then, I've graduated to the likes of Foursquare ECSs, etc., and left Old Brigand behind, and to which I'm now going to revisit." So a very eloquently stated email there, but I loved that someone, when they were first getting started on their spirits journey and were looking for the perfect intersection of value and taste, also landed on Old Brigand. So maybe we
Yeah.
weren't so crazy after all, John.
I don't know. I think we're onto something. There was a few other people that hailed the Old Brigand winning, and they were actually saying beforehand that they thought it might win, which it was crazy, right? I mean, we had at least one person. I think we mentioned
Proof
Chris.
prophetic, yeah.
Yes. So like, I guess it's not out of nowhere, but I still feel like just the price to value ratio, as we were mentioning, is just so high on it that it was surprising how really rich it was for given its value or price on the bottle.
We should
So
probably shut up because I feel like next thing we
yeah.
know, we're gonna go into Total Wine and Old Brigand is all of a sudden gonna be
Oh,
$10 more expensive.
and at least two people I think told me they couldn't find it in their local Total Wines.
Already
So holy
happening.
crap.
Anyway, one
As
one
Richard
last
Seal sits back and laughs.
yeah.
Evil laughter.
Doing the Scrooge McDuck dive into all the Old Brigand profits. One last email we got at one point during that episode, we struggled to do some sort of ill-informed coffee analogy. Do you remember this, John? We were
Yes.
trying, both of us don't know anything about coffee, and we were trying to compare coffee to rum and make a connection there and just struggling our way through it like a couple of idiots. Fortunately, we had a Rumcast listener, Nelson, who wrote an incredible email in.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, I was like, this could have been a blog post, and I'm not saying that to insult it as being a long email because it was really informative.
It was.
But Nelson is a coffee aficionado, huge coffee fan, and broke down for us the best way to compare coffee to rum. And I won't go into all the particulars, but basically, Nelson said from his perspective that specialty coffee has three main focuses. One focus is on the coffee varietals. The second focus is on the processing. And the third focus is on the location or terroir. And he said that the best comparison for rum is in how the coffee is processed. And he broke down the various ways. So there's apparently natural process, washed process, honey process,
Yeah.
and then other kind of experimental processes. And he likened each of those to various rum categories. So the natural process is kind of like the funky Jamaican rum of coffee. The wash process is more, it's kind of cleaner, more stable, and that's kind of those Latin American rums, the big column stills, clean profile. The honey process is more of the what did he have for that one? He said it's kind of like a mix of the Jamaican process and the Spanish heritage process. And then the other processing methods, the experimental ones, those are like your Clarins, your Paranubes, and things like that with kind of the wild, funky fermentation. Yeah. But one of the main things we pointed out was you and I were going back and forth on, do coffee aficionados like light roast or dark roast?
Yeah.
And Nelson really cleared that up. So this was my favorite comparison. So basically in the world of coffee connoisseurship, dark roasts are kind of the frowned upon, heavily sweetened, artificially flavored rums of the world. So Nelson said, dark roasts are generally, but not always, avoided. Dark roasts from mainstream brands like Starbucks are definitely avoided. They over roast for consistency, which results in a burnt, bitter taste. So strong, burnt, and bitter for coffee, sweet, vanilla, and oak for the mass market rums that we kind of turn our noses up at. So I just wanted to set the record straight on, I think we were going in the right direction with the coffee and rum analogies. We just didn't have the requisite knowledge to really land the plane on that one. So I appreciate Nelson writing in and setting the record straight on that.
I agree. And I found out, first of all, like one of my favorite coffees that I drink like on a daily basis is the Starbucks dark roast.
So you're like, basically, you're basically over there drinking like, I don't know, like the Captain Morgan, cherry flavor spice.
I'm on the Blue Chair Bay coffee, apparently. Yes. I didn't know, but he made great points because one of the things I like, and the reason I usually get that coffee is because I guess I probably have a crap coffee maker. Like, it's just like, not that great of a machine. And so I find that I get more coffee flavor out of it that way. And so, that maybe will be my saving grace as to why I prefer that, because I've tried the lighter roasts. I want to explore those, but all the ones I've ever tried, they taste weak as heck to me. So I'm doing something wrong, but thanks to Nelson, at least I'm a little bit closer now than I was last week. So
you got to upgrade
I'm
the gear.
Keep trying.
You got to upgrade the
Yeah.
gear. Well,
Yeah,
other
I'm gonna
than
keep
that,
trying.
other than struggling to make your terrible coffee for yourself, how have things been going down in Miami?
I'm doing okay, but it has been a week for me, let me tell you, because one thing that maybe this has happened to you, Will, so I have to ask, have you ever burnt your tongue on something hot? Speaking of coffee, funny enough,
Oh
that
yeah, that would
it,
have been a
it
great transition.
yes, damn it, I missed that. Golly. I got there late. It was just a little
Yeah.
late. Um, but I burned my tongue
Yes,
on
I've burned my
hot
tongue on
coffee.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's
Have
done
you
that
ever
at some
done
point,
this?
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I burned the crap out of my tongue this week.
Okay.
And what I noticed is, unsurprisingly to some degree, is that man, I can't like taste or drink the rum very well that I usually do and get the notes out of it that I usually do. So now I'm like Googling to like, well, how long is this going to last and when is it going to
Hmm.
come back? I did find out that the mouth apparently heals the fastest of anything.
Oh,
So
interesting.
like, it said it won't take long to come back. And
The
already
mouth is the
today,
Wolverine of body parts.
exactly that.
It's
Nice. I
me
like
making
that.
the comic book references on this
That was
episode.
excellent. I got to give you credit for that one. Um, but yeah, so it's coming back already. Now it's been a couple of days, but I was just wondering if like, so when we have our taste buds on our tongue, and I know that they replicate, every so often anyways, but
Hmm.
like if that's going to change our impression of certain tastes and flavor profiles over time, like inherently, like our taste buds change?
I think they
And like,
do. I've
yeah.
heard that as you age, like certain things don't come through as strongly and things like that. And obviously, if you can burn your tongue and change stuff, I'm sure there are natural, uh, maybe there's some natural deterioration over time. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll have a tongue expert send us an email and break it all down for us, like
I'm
the
sure
coffee
hoping
thing.
so. There
Yeah.
has to be a tongue expert out there that's also a rum person and can tell us more about the tongue and whether or not have you ever seen those tongue cleaners, by the way?
Like
That
a
like
tongue
you
scraper thing.
yeah, tongue scraper. Like I
Yeah.
usually when I brush my teeth, I just use my like toothbrush, but apparently
Yeah.
the tongue scraper is supposed to be better. So, like should we be scraping our tongue to help our taste buds taste things better,
Or maybe if you
including
if you
rum?
scrape it too much,
Or yeah,
does that lead to possible damage? Who can say?
we need a tongue expert.
Well,
Yeah.
until we have one, as you said, we do have a great interview with Ben Jones from Spiribam on this episode. And really, we had Keo O'Brien, who kind of runs all things marketing, does a bunch of stuff over there at Spiribam. We had her on as maybe one of the first, I don't know, 15 or so
Yeah, it
guests
was
on the
pretty early on.
Rumcast,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was primarily focused on rum agricole in that interview and some of the things that they're doing with Rhum J.M and Rhum Clément. And then we also, a little while after that, had Margaret Monplaisy and Denny Duplessis from St. Lucia Distillers on the Rumcast. But it had been a few years since those episodes, and we ran into Ben at Miami Rum Congress. And we're like, hey, we need to catch up on, just everything that's been going on. Also, they recently added a new distillery in French Guiana to their portfolio, another cane juice rum maker. That's very exciting. They also have one in Mauritius that we talk a little bit about, but it was a good chance to kind of catch up on all the new stuff that's coming from J.M., from Clément, because they have some really interesting releases coming up this year that we had a chance to try a few of them, but there were several Ben told us about that I didn't know were coming down the pipeline that are pretty intriguing. And then also, as always, interesting things at St. Lucia Distillers. I actually got a lot into kind of like the St. Lucia Distillers Spiribam origin story and just a lot of history from there that I hadn't heard before and was really fascinating since that's I'm such a fan of that distillery. So it was cool to get to learn about all that and talked a little bit about some of the new stuff as well, which may not be coming to the US soon necessarily, but it was
Mm-hmm.
great to know about other distilleries out there that we don't get to see as often.
Yeah, not soon come for those, right?
Not soon come, unfortunately.
But maybe sometime at some point, or maybe
Someday,
we'll have
someday
a lot of
come.
people. Yeah, or we can go to it, right? We can take
Exactly.
some trips and find it someday.
Or we can go to France and pick some up there in a year or so, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So count yourself lucky if you're in France and have access to all that lovely rum agricole from around the world. But with all that said, let's go ahead, take a quick break, and then get right over to the interview. here with Ben Jones, the director of Spiribam for North America. Ben, we ran into you a couple months back at Miami Rum Congress. I think that was in February. I know you do a lot of traveling. Where have your rum travels taken you since then? Have you done anything else?
Wow. Well, yes. Somehow the month of April was quite a bit. But mainly just staying here in the US domestic market. I don't know, in some sort of short order. There was New York, Florida, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, not in the same order.
Wow.
Houston, Texas, and Austin, Texas.
Okay, so just a little bit then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you make it off the plane for most of those? Geez,
yeah,
that's a
right.
lot.
Some of those cities were less than 24 hours,
Uh-huh.
like an overnight and a morning or afternoon or something like that. But no, it was a lot going on. Some of it non-rum related. We now represent a cognac brand, but
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
we'll save that for another show. But the other part of April for us is we've listened more internally or externally, I guess you could say, if we're doing a good job. We tried to kind of declare April as the Rhum J.M month.
Okay.
It kind of just happened organically, and there is a pun there, sort of. The fact is that last year, so April of 2022, we less or more adopted Earth Day, or the month of April, to basically exclaim, pronounce, announce our lifelong commitment to sustainability for Rhum Jam through what's called the Eden Project.
Okay.
The Eden Project kind of started to take shape, I want to say, around 2010 or those years, a little over a decade ago, which was when we took drastic steps to make major investments into the Rhum J.M distillery for overall production, overhaul, rehabilitation, refurbishment. We've added fermentation tanks. We added some adjacent lands for sugarcane, for more sugarcane, what have you. But as we started to invest more into the production part of it, and amplify it and augment our production, there were a lot of upgrades as far as for equipment and what have you. But I guess by principle, every decision, every choice that was made first and foremost with the idea of the environment and the pastoral environment and pastoral area of where Rhum Jam is produced. It's in, I don't know if you guys have been to Martinique yet, but
We haven't. No.
No, we were waiting on the invite. Yeah, no.
So your invitation is now in the email. No, the invitation is there, right here. It's right here. You guys heard it live and direct. Will, John, you're invited. Please come down to see us.
We have no excuse now. Yeah.
Yeah, now you have no excuse. If you can even get there, it's quite.
I know. Yeah.
First of all, it's difficult to get to Martinique, and then when you get to Martinique, it's extremely well. I mean, once you're on the island, that's probably the biggest. That's the biggest hurdle. But Rhum Jam is in itself isolated on the island of Martinique. You have to.
It's like all the way on the north, right?
Farthest, most northernmost point of the island.
Okay.
To drive around to the backside of the volcano Montpellier. And when you arrive at the J.M Distillery, it's literally like at the foot of the volcano. Looking down above it when you enter, it's just in this beautiful sort of jungle, thick rainforest jungle environment. And so really with that in mind, the overall rehabilitation and investment into production really we had to take the pastoral setting very, very much into into the decision making process. The short story is that we never took the cheapest option. We always took typically, sometimes more often than not, the most expensive choice was made, but it was because of how we planned to we had an opportunity to really take a step back and to how could we like redesign and relay out how our production processes are going to be, which we basically, and by the way, this wasn't so much in the idea of like, oh, we're going to be the most sustainable distillery in the world. It was just kind of like, these are choices as you're making step by step, year over year over year, on what kind of brand that Rhum Jam will be and should be, and really with the lifelong commitment to say that we are going to continue to improve the way Rhum J.M is made every year, the people that are behind Rhum J.M and how they are, improve the people, invest in the people, invest in the distillery, invest in the place. And in no short order, we created basically our own internal circular economy of production where, I don't know, like, how do I start? I'll start with the boiler. The boiler is is a massive. It was a much bigger piece of equipment than we anticipated for it, originally, and it had something to do with the fact that it's basically, the best way for me to describe it is like it's like a catalytic converter. So there is a system where it reconsumes its own smoke, its own waste. And the end result is that there is no actual smoke put out into the atmosphere whatsoever. If you look very, very carefully, you can see that sort of transparent heat coming out of the stack, but there's no white or dark smoke. Most distilleries, you see a white smoke, and that's the scrubbers that are working, that are, basically your waste. That is controlled by the European Union. So it's like France and the European Union, but this is one step above. So there's really, when you're looking at the distillery, it almost looks like it's not even in production because you can't even see the smoke.
Right.
The vinasse, which is the spent sugarcane wine, that is totally now naturally organically treated. Other distilleries would probably use calcium or lime to retreat, to basically treat the pH. We now we built a system of like 5 different basins, pools that are actually up in the sugarcane fields, and with some organic vegetable matter and some bacteria and enzymes that are introduced. You have these lilies and these other plant organisms with the bacteria that are they're working together, consume nitrogens and basically balancing the pH, which then we'll use that conditioned vinasse, and we mix it with ash from the boiler as well as spent sugarcane, the bagasse, and we make our own compost, which goes over the sugarcane fields and actually on our banana fields. And actually, by accident, we learned that we've been able to increase our bananas yield by 17% since we've been using that. All of the management now is driving electric vehicles. We have a totally equal gender base between men and women on the management team. There are now something like 950 hours of paid technical training that is given to our staff to continue to maintain and improve the way we're producing. And really, again, that goes back into what I mean to say is trying to improve Rhum J.M, not only for today, but for tomorrow. And that the real commitment is that every day we are improving, we're improving the Rhum J.M, the brand, the flavor, of course, the quality of the liquid, the overall brand. I mean, the idea is that the enthusiasts, the fans of the Rhum J.M lovers can really feel confident that they've chosen a brand that they enjoy. And that the choices we made behind the brand for our own environmental sustainability of the circular economy and the overall social welfare and the people force. I mean, these are some of the most important assets and parts behind Rhum J.M. This year, this Earth Day, we took the occasion to use the month of April to launch and introduce Terroir Volcanique. And so that's the newest expression of Rhum J.M that's come out. It's a 3-year-old age rum, but we don't take an age statement. We're really more proud in talking about the product and where it comes from. Terroir Volcanique. So it's it's the sugar cane growing up the slopes of the volcano. It really talked about our place, our location, the influences of how we produce the rum, not just with the sugar cane and then distill it, but also the way we treat the barrels. These are barrels that were we introduced them first to recharred bourbon barrel, and then they go to our own recharred barrel that we are reconditioning, but they are charred to a very, very high maximum char level, basically a char 5, which I think is actually off of the scale.
You turned it up to 11.
So it is a deep, rich, like alligator toast char. These are barrels that we've already used for our rum, so they're already soaking with our rum. So we're just using the rum that's in the barrels to char it. But the toast level is really designed to actually create a smoky flavor. almost
And
like a peaty flavorness to it. So like the fruitiness. I mean, the rum is not overaged by any means. It's 3 months. So in
Hmm.
my opinion, that's still fairly green, and so you're getting like that nice sort of fresh. You still have that fresh sugarcane rum mixed in with that sort of smoky, charred aging from the barrel, and I feel like you get this like nice sort of like peaty, minty, and very, very much smoky flavor to the rum, which is very very cool. And so it's really just, it's really celebrating, where we are producing, where we're distilling, and where we're aging, and how we treat our own barrels. We have our own cooperage that, as we're repairing and recharring the barrels, and we're able to customize our toast and char levels in a variety of different ways to create different flavors. And all of that all the credit goes back to Karine LaSalle, who is our master blender and of course head of the cellar.
Yeah.
and this is the rum that is replacing VO in the lineup, correct?
Exactly, Will. Yep.
So yeah, John and I had a chance to try that at Rum
Hmm.
Congress. Really nice rum. Excited for more people to try it. So when you make a decision like that, we're gonna have this new product. It's gonna replace a long-standing product that people are used to seeing. How long ago did you make that decision, and how long does it take to go from conceptualizing the idea to actually changing everything over and getting it out there?
I think that's a unique question for each product, in my opinion. I think
Hmm.
what happened with Terroir Volcanique was when we all saw the packaging. Um, I felt I first laid eyes on the bottle and the way that the labels were designed, and I didn't have any input into it. I don't have input into every bottle and every product, but I do have some input on many, not
Hmm.
Hmm.
all of them, but this one I don't think I other than, we kept the same color scheme and whatnot, but I just love the bottle. It's kind of got that, non-transparent sort of foggy
Yeah.
glass to
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
Um, and then I just overall the label like really stands out when you see the distillery, and like the packaging kind of tells beautifully the story that I'm trying my best to tell you how the liquid came together. Um, Overall, I think that VO, which is an age statement, is not overly sexy as an age statement. It's 3 years,
Hmm.
3 years old. I don't think it's as well established as like what VSOP and XO is. Maybe not. I don't know, but I don't think anyone was buying J.M. VO because of the age statement. I thought they were.
Right.
I would have said they were buying it because it's really really good rum, and it's an age rum, and they're probably buying for a Rhum J.M. So I think that what started out as like a little project that Karine was playing with as far as toasting these barrels and creating this new flavor profile, and then it went into this product, and then the brand manager Roxanne led the development of the label, and really the whole thing came together, the story, packaging. And I would tell you that VO is not at all canceled. It was just that I don't need another rum at the same. I did decide to sell it at the same price point of VO, but
Uh-huh.
I thought that the two were cannibalizing each other, and I thought we would really be better served to really give Terroir Volcanique its own space, its own platform to succeed. Um, so that's why. That's at least that's what we're doing in the United States. Terroir Volcanique took off in France. I don't think they've canceled VO or anything like that. I don't know if the word cancel is, but they've discontinued VO.
Hmm.
And I know we haven't done so in Martinique. So it was
Hmm.
just more of a US decision.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but well, we've gone way into Rum JM, which
Yes.
is fantastic in terms of the focus actually answers one of my questions later. I still want to get to it, but I get where that happens and the focus on that brand for this month. I want to take a step back for people first to start by saying I know you're a well-known name and a well-known face, especially among the rum cognoscenti, if you will. But for those that might be a little less familiar, I know your title at Spiribam is managing director, and I think it would be interesting to set the landscape for people to tell for you to tell them what does your job entail and what does an average day look like for you? How involved are you in each of those brands under Spiribam?
Well, if you could ever tell me what an average day looks like. Um,
When you're not on a plane, that is.
yeah, right. So there's a few questions in there. An average day, there is no average day. When I do start having average days is when I start to get bored and restless. So it's probably dangerous if I have an average day. Right now I'm in my office in Rhode Island. I moved to Rhode Island almost 12 or 13 years ago. I started the company when I was living in New York City, at least the U.S. base of operations and whatnot, when we first introduced Rhum Clément to the United States. I guess that's my first segue into how I got into this, which was that my mother's originally from Martinique, and I grew up around the brand Rhum Clément. My great uncle on my mother's side is Omer Clément, the founder of Rhum Clément. And I always grew up as a child thinking that, I was always very insanely proud of Rhum Clément and my heritage and Martinique and visiting, and just I was always very proud and about my roots, the French Caribbean roots in Martinique, and we always talked a lot about our family being from there and visiting there and what have you. And Rhum Clément for me was it was very much in my face all the time. So why wouldn't it be a well-known brand? And then it wasn't until I matured a lot later, and actually really for me when I got to college, everyone's drinking Captain Morgan and Coke or something like that. Wow, we don't have to drink this crap.
Yeah, I loved the story you told, the interview with Rum Revelations about bringing a bottle of VSOP to your college dorm room.
Yeah.
And I was trying to imagine if I had encountered Clément VSOP when I was, 18 or 19, if I would have been ready for it. I don't think I would have been. So I feel like it's better that I found out about it later in life.
Well, it's so interesting because that's the opposite approach, right? So Ben is saying, hey, I grew up with this and kind of, it was always there, versus the opposite of like, well, when we're, especially us in the US, maybe more gravitating towards the molasses-based rums in our market. And then so it kind of gives you this completely inverse perspective, which is interesting, right, Ben?
Inverse perspective is totally ideal. By the way, I still at that time, even though I would say maybe I was first days of being a brand ambassador, I was not planning on going into the rum business by any means. That happened after school. I could have been a finance bra.
That would have made for a much less interesting interview now, though. So
depends. Maybe I'd have like the first rum Bitcoin. I don't know.
NFT, a rum NFT.
Right.
Of the bottle.
Those are doing great right now.
But no, but I did stumble into the beverage alcohol business. I was a brewer for a small actually quite well established now, but small craft brewery in Portland, Maine. I was bartending, I was working restaurants, serving all that stuff. I was in hospitality. I always had a massive love affair with food. Again, growing up with my mother, growing up at a farm, watching her, make rillettes and pate and even playing with cheese and butter and what have you. I ended up in Italy working with Italian wine brands and basically started an incubating company to launch these wine brands, which is basically where the two roads converged with rum. So at a family dinner, I had learned through my uncle that Rhum Clément was looking to expand off of the island of Martinique and in France and get better organized, and that I was already importing these Italian wines. So the question was, why don't you try to import Rhum Clément? And so fast forward, that's how it got started. I started with Rhum Clément and the Italian wine at the same time, but after about a year and a half, 2 years, I stopped with the wine business altogether, and I've been doing this since then. Rhum J.M came shortly thereafter. The group brought in Rhum J.M in 2002, 2003, which kind of accelerated the conversation about Rhum Clément and Rhum J.M eventually coming off of the island and developing a little bit of business behind these brands and to celebrate where they come from and really exporting the culture, the French Caribbean culture of rum and tea punch and rum alcohol, etc. But Rhum J.M was not at that time ready. When I first got started, was not at that time ready. It needed a lot of work, as we already talked about, to be rehabilitated and then just even getting rum in the barrel for aging. It takes time, of course. So it wasn't until about 2009 that we brought Rhum J.M, and then but very very small quantities. It's only recently now that after we already talked about with Rhum J.M and its growth cycle recently in the last decade or so that you start to see Rhum J.M more globally distributed.
When you say that JM wasn't exactly ready, is that like upgrades that need to take place at the distillery itself? Is it the products that are available in the packaging? Like what all is it that needed to
No, in
change?
2002, the previous family, the Cosmedoi family, they were I don't know, the brand was really at its last legs, almost into financial despair and into bankruptcy. They
Oh
were
wow.
selling off bulk sugarcane and bulk rum to competition just to kind of pay some bills. And then there was another major regulation that came down, and a mandatory investment into fire retardation that came from the government if that was not done, then they would have forced to sell.
Okay,
Right.
wow.
There was a massive threat that one of the other major groups on the island was going to take it on and fold it into their operation and probably close down the distillery and mothball the distillery and just take the brand.
Wow.
Right.
And the Ayad family came in literally at the 11th hour and saved it from such peril. And decided to keep it totally independent, to keep and the rum agricole Martinique rum industry alive and diversified, with trying to preserve these beautiful heritage brands, what they are.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking like in 2003, 2004. I first come around in 2000. Like I first start working officially and with Rhum Clément in 2004. So this is just soon after. But there was a lot of time and energy needed to take place as far as distilling at Rhum J.M, putting away some rum to age in barrels and just getting everything kind of online. So that's what I mean to say that Rhum J.M was not ready. And then it wasn't ready for massive, global brand development and distribution or anything like that. Not until at least 5-6 years could transpire.
Yeah.
So
this is a comeback story then.
This is a comeback story.
It's a marathon, but it's a comeback story. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you have to know about Rhum J.M before then.
Yeah.
Rhum J.M has always carried like a legacy where it's one of the finest rums on the island. And when we got involved, it was the smallest producing distillery on the island, and now I think Rhum J.M is probably catapulted to maybe the fourth largest distillery on the island, which is quite a significant feat.
It's really I was just gonna say it's really interesting because at Rum Congress, John and I both had the opportunity to try the vintage release, the latest one, that was distilled in 2002.
Yes,
and it's crazy to imagine that all that kind of almost turmoil, peril the brand was under was like right around that time when that rum was distilled, and I was blown away by that rum. I thought it was incredible. So.
Yeah, I'm looking for that one too.
It's just it's always wild to think about what was happening with a distillery at the time when the product was actually distilled, and now you're seeing it now, and the brand is in a completely different place.
Yeah.
So it's just cool to think about.
Yeah.
So Ben, with your background being as diverse as it is, and you mentioned you like food, and I was curious to know, how often are you engaged with the production of the rums, and how often are you tasting products and providing feedback?
Well, I'm tasting and providing more feedback in the finishing processes, in the blends as we're putting together new products. And I was doing that more so pre-pandemic, traveling a lot to the distillery, to St. Lucia Distillers. I was very involved in Chairman's Legacy. And now that was the first expression under Chairman's that we really developed, I would say, as Spiribam in partnership with the SLD crew. Chairman's Original, Chairman's White, Chairman's Spiced, Forgotten Cask. Those all came in, when we acquired St. Lucia Distillers, and the first I would say the first project was really to just give a big facelift and rehabilitation to the brand Chairman's and to really understand the brand Chairman's.
Yeah.
But we did a packaging upgrade, and we really wanted to. I loved the story behind Laurie Barnard. I really found him to be a visionary, a man way ahead of his time in the rum industry, and kudos to him. He was very, very humble, and he didn't like to talk too much about himself. But it's a shame because his story is a great one, and I wish more people knew about him and how important he is to St. Lucia's rum history and legacy. But we have to kind of do that now for him. So we created Chairman's Legacy, and the idea that I wanted to kind of do was bring a sort of a baby version of 1931 to the bottle. 1931 was the last brand project that he worked on prior to his death. He actually signed the first formula in 1931 from his hospital bed.
Oh, wow.
And the 1931, as you know, was its own independent brand that was just being launched by SLD, St. Lucia Distillers, at the time of his passing. And then they continued on with it, basically honoring his wishes and following his direction. But it didn't make a lot of sense going forward because they were coming up with new blends every year, but there was not a lot of inventory, and there was always going to be a limited edition type of release. And we just needed to do some overall brand and SKU rationalization. So we folded 1931 under Chairman's, and so we have the Chairman's 1931 with one consistent annual formula. But I wanted to continue to keep that story and that legacy going of blending, and we've now taken the slogan "Art of Blending" for Chairman's around the world. So we talk a lot about blending. We talk a lot about the history and the influences and the impacts that Mr. Barnard brought to the distillery over his tenure as managing director, as chairman, for over 30 years. And legacy is that. So, legacy is a blend of rums that are 5 to 8 years old, but there is an expression from each of the stills. So you have the column still shows up, excuse me, John Doerr 1, John Doerr 2, Vendome, all of these distillates maturates that are coming from these stills show up, plus a little bit of sugarcane juice.
Yeah.
John Doerr 1, that's at 5 years old. And so all of the different little inputs that Laurie brought onto the distillery over his tenure as chairman came in and show up in the Chairman's Legacy, and then in real true fashion and keeping it really Laurie's project. We fought hard to get to a price point at around $40 a bottle because, again, his humble personality, he wouldn't have. I don't think he would have appreciated the fact that if we put his rum in some sort of glorious decanter, some flashy packaging, and charged, $150 for it or something like that, that wouldn't fit his legacy.
Yeah.
So it's in the standard Chairman's bottle. It's at $42 around the United States market. Unfortunately, I mean, I think we should be doing a lot better with it. We launched it during the pandemic. We could do a lot much better with it because I love the rum. The rum is phenomenal. It's like a little baby, it's like a little rum salad, like all these different things going on with it.
Rum salad.
Rum salad.
I think that someone that's really into rum should grab a bottle and try it because it's the best bang for your buck, honestly.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. John and I have talked about that rum. I think maybe our first year, I don't know if our second year doing the podcast, we started doing like a year in review episode at the end and have some categories and talk about some of our favorite rums in various categories. And we've done like a best value category, and I don't remember which year it was, but one of the years one of us picked Chairman's Legacy for that. For all the reasons for all the reasons you just mentioned. Like I have nothing else to add because you described exactly why I think that's such a great rum. But it really is cool, and it's awesome how you can taste so many different components in it. It's got the juice in there. So now that we're on to St. Lucia Distillers, I know when Spiribam came into the picture with them, you made a lot of investments in upgrading the distillery, giving the packaging a facelift, as you were talking about. Some new products came about. I wanted to ask, when you acquire a distillery and brands like that, what is kind of the process for assessing everything? How do you decide what to focus on and what to leave alone? Because I think that's something interesting with St. Lucia Distillers is it seems that you know gave them a lot of resources to upgrade things, but it seems like you weren't super hands-on in terms of like, now do all this stuff differently with your production. And that struck me as a decision that not everyone would have made, perhaps, and it seems like one that has paid off. So how do you kind of take stock of what's out there and decide what to focus on and what to leave alone with something new?
Well, I mean, every distillery is its own living, breathing identity.
Hmm.
And I think the choices are basically, I mean, you already said it. It's what we come and we bring to the table, and what what the distillery, what the other side brings to the table. It's really should be seen more as a marriage.
Hmm.
I think. You know, I don't know, like my wife doesn't watch or listen to Rum podcasts, so I can say this, but as much as I'd ever wanted to change anything about her, I would never do that, because that doesn't make our partnership or our life very interesting, right?
Yeah. We'll grab that clip and we'll send it to you separately so you can just, show it to her.
but I mean, ultimately, so every sort of distillery, I guess, they're all very different. But I would say that we probably come with the idea of what synergies exist between the two sides, the two parties, and what can we leverage. And in the case of St. Lucia Distillers, they were making great rum.
Yeah.
That was something we needed to leverage.
Mm-hmm.
Not change, but leverage. The fact that they're making phenomenal rum, led by Mr. Barnard, and like after his passing, they basically were, if I had to make a criticism in a good way, they were robotic. They had their notebook and they said, Mr. Barnard asked us to make, this many thousands of liters of John Doerr 2 rum, and this many thousands of liters of John Doerr 1 rum, and we're supposed to fill this many barrels, and we're supposed to purchase 24 port casks a year. It was very robotic. And I remember coming in the very beginning, we kind of did a quick math, which was like, well, they're only producing like 60% of the rum that they're producing is going into like their everyday sort of proprietary blends, Chairman's and Bounty and Admirani, and all these other things were done on an experimental basis. But that's a lot, maybe it wasn't 40%, but it was something like, call it 30 to 40%.
Yeah, that does seem like,
and it's like, what are you guys doing? Oh, well, like,
Mm-hmm.
Barnard asked us to do this and make all these different rums, and I'm sure he had an idea. He was just already working on the 1931 project, what have you. But they needed to, pay bills and whatnot, so they were selling that stuff to the bulk market.
Uh-huh.
So independent bottlers were like drooling and coming through, and there's brands like Hamilton had some, and Plantation had some, and Berry Brothers and Rudd had some, and there was people were pulling up, St. Lucian rum, and they were throwing their own labels on it. So that's where it was going. So our first, decision, honestly, was to stop that. Not to change the way that we're making their rum. The rum was fantastic,
Yeah.
but and I would say they were very fortunate that somebody wasn't taking their rum and making, I don't know, lizard breath St. Lucian rum, or bubblegum flavored, rum or something like that, and it could potentially really, hurt and tarnish the overall identity of St. Lucia and St. Lucia rum and the legacy of Laurie and all those things. So, they're fortunate that, and and they're not stupid either. So they were working with good operators and bottlers,
Right.
and what have you. So it wasn't that bad, but who knows? And so I think, but if we were going to make the investments and the upgrades and what we were going to do to the distillery and what we were going to do for the brands, the most important part was to have full control over the rum that was leaving the island, and making sure that these treasures, these rum treasures, were really used for our own bottling. So the first step was to launching a barrel program for Chairman's, and really kind of open up the cabinet of the rums that we had in our vault, and to really get rum connoisseurs and enthusiasts really excited about St. Lucia, excited about Chairman's Reserve. and we launched the Chairman's Reserve Master Selection with some really, really iconic bottlings that were, of course, limited. It'd be one cask, so 220, 230 bottles of this, 16-year-old pot still at cask strength, or a 50-50 blend of pot and column, or a 50-50 blend of two pots blended together, which then spent another 8 or 10 years in Madeira casks. There's like some really cool stuff that doesn't really fit into the framework of a brand by itself, but like it fits under Chairman's, because Chairman's is the art of blending, and it kind of helps tell the story that this is Chairman's Reserve deconstructed, and that our blender has 54 metrics to work with every day that he's tasting, that he has to find a way to plug in. And yes, we have the 1931 and we have the Legacy, which are these cool bespoke blends that we're putting out every year. But we have the Forgotten Cask, and we have the Vintage. There's a vintage blend now that's really cool. That the vintage blend we did in 2009, and next to come up is the 2011, where Denny Duplessis, the master blender, is taking. I always thought this was an oxymoron. I was like, how do you do a vintage blend? But all of the distillates are coming from the same vintage. So in the 2009, you have 5 different rums, distillates that all came from the different all the different stills, which were aged independently in the cellar and then blended together 11 years later. And that's your vintage blend. And so these things are happening already. Some of the cooler stuff that I see, like going back to our barrel program, was like, I love when there was something that Lori, I believe came from Lori, or somebody, maybe Ian or Denny, but around 3 years is when they start to play with blending these rums. So they'll take a column distilled rum and a pot distilled rum, and after 3 years of aging, they'll marry it together and put it in a barrel, and then let it sit for 8 years. Or a Vendome still and a John Doerr 2 still two pot still rums, and at 3 years they blend it together, and then they'll put it back in the cellar for 7, 8, 10 years. And then after that, it might transfer to a pour cask for a couple of years. So all these different things are happening, and it's really hard to follow the family tree from the still to the cellar to bottle, what have you. But this is the art of blending. That it's not just happening in the lab when you're blending different rums together. The blending sometimes starts years prior to that,
during the aging process.
During the aging process, exactly. So anyway, I mean, getting back to your original question, no, we didn't have to change anything that we were doing in their production. It was really a ship without a captain. We were there as a captain. We had to kind of give them the confidence to keep doing what you're doing. And in fact, in pure Lori legacy, continue to push the envelope and challenge, what else can we be doing? What else have you thought about doing? Lennox Wilson, who's Jamaican, has always spoken fondly of doing something with like cane trash and coming up with different sort of bacterias and in our fermentation processes to come up with new flavors. I mean, so we're open to all these ideas. No, what we come in with is distribution expertise, marketing expertise, overall packaging and all those things. I would not say I say distribution and marketing expertise, which I think we still have a long way to go as far as learning the game of distribution and marketing, all of those things. But we come, from an outside perspective, a young, passionate, energetic team that has a good vision. And I think that, our team is very passionate about what we're doing, and we're very passionate about the rum community and the rum universe. And so we're very fortunate to start with brands like Clément and then J.M, and then eventually have Chairman's, and then Bounty and Admiral Rodney from St. Lucia. And now we have some other brands from the Indian Ocean, from Mauritius. We just actually acquired another rum distillery, an agricultural distillery in South America, in French Guiana. So we like rum, and we see a very, very bright future for rum. The challenge is to educate the consumer, educate the drinker about these different rums. And I think some of the biggest fight we have is that we're fighting the same marketplace with rums that aren't so, I would say, legitimate or transparent as we can be. And we really tried. I mean, we don't have to try so hard, because we believe on the principle of being transparent and direct, and following the path of education, and not really trying to mislead the consumer. And it's a little bit different, when you have to fight with other brands that have a different mentality.
Yeah, I'm
That-
glad you mentioned that and in the chairman's reserve master selection, because I think the education piece goes hand in hand with that. We've talked a lot about how those master selections and the single stills or what have you, just having that diverse kind of different stills and different aging and different components available in that way helps with the education at a different level perhaps than maybe at a basic level. But it's very interesting to see those and allow us to kind of explore that as rum connoisseurs a little bit more. I'm glad you mentioned it also, because I was thinking as we were preparing for this interview that, gosh, Chairman's does such an amazing job with that barrel program and all of those releases, but we don't really see it as much from the Martinique Spiribam blends brands. I know they exist, and I think we even saw like a grappa release for a Clément that's coming out, and a brandy release. So I know they exist, but for whatever reason, in the U.S. market, I don't feel like we see those as much. And I wanted to get your opinion on that.
well, they're coming.
Okay, good.
They are definitely coming. I mean, first and foremost, we have to get the American consumer onto agricole rum. Rum agricole is still very much in its infancy, I think, in the United States. But what can excite and bring more enthusiasm to rum agricole as doing some of these unique releases? Rhum J.M a few years back did a very, very cool program with releasing rums that were finished in Calvados, Armagnac, and Cognac casks, and they did a partnership with LeComte, Calvados, Armagnac, Terriquier, and Cognac de Lama. They only bottled them in 500 ml, so that those were already not available for the United States for that purpose. But they did it in that bottle size because they didn't do so many casks, and so they basically were effectively able to spread out the extend the release by using smaller bottles to
We love smaller size bottles.
Yeah.
We talk all the time about how we wish more brands would do that.
Yep, that's what they did, but they chose a bottle size that was not available for the US, or otherwise I would have brought some of that in. That rum is delicious. I still have some here. Clément probably had the first barrel program in Martinique, and what I was doing in the United States, I did the Clément cask collection. But wow, we've come a long way since then. Those were like single casks, and some of them were like single varietal. We did like Can Bleu, 100% Can Bleu aged 4 years or 6 years or something like that. And then we just did different things, like with choosing between French oak and New American oak and Reach Our Bourbon Barrel. But yeah, I know we had to continue to innovate, I guess, and to try to stay one step ahead. And then anyway, we took the program a little bit further, and now we're doing these finishes. So coming this year, you have the grappa finish, you have a sake finish, tequila finish. There is Oloroso, Pedro Jimenez, and there's one more French brandy finish. So there's 6 of those. Those are all 4-year VSOP rums that were then aged an additional year in those 6 different barrels. This year we're adding sherry, we're adding ice wine, I think we're adding Belgian beer, and then we're repeating tequila and sake, I believe. So we'll do another 6. So that program is happening now, which will be released next year in 2024. So Clément, and these are all cask strength. So this year you'll start to see trickling now. The product is just arriving now into the market. So you'll see it out into the market. And there's only not so many bottles each. Maybe between 300 and 500 of each bottle.
I think people listening will be surprised by some of those cask types. I mean, it's it's not the only time that I've seen rum, with a tequila finish. It might be the first grappa one that I've seen, but out of all of those, were there one or two in particular that kind of surprised you the most in terms of either how much you enjoyed them or just what it did to the rum?
Grappa by far was I didn't expect it. I had a little experience with a grappa when I was in the Italian wine business. And grappa, like, okay, barrel aged grappa, and you don't see a lot of barrel aged grappa.
Yeah.
So and then I thought the products would be too close to have like a real influence, and that's kind of like foolish to say because brandy is a great base distillate, and so is grappa, but
Hmm.
like just I don't know. I wasn't expecting a lot, and the overall change in flavor profile and the positive change and the delicious sort of
Hmm.
nuances on the finish of that rum is the one that kind of caught me by surprise. I love that Oloroso and the Pedro Jimenez. It adds a little sweetness to the French rum agricole, which is nice to have because it takes a little bit of the edge off the dryness.
Hmm.
So that's kind of like a unique sort of input or influence into the rums that you don't typically see without introducing a different barrel type like that.
Yeah.
Um, everyone from a sales perspective went hot over sake, and I think that was just because how unique it was, and then
Yeah.
because everyone, if it says tequila on the bottle, it seems to sell. So, um, I think, yeah, for next year. I'm also very curious about ice wine. I think
Hmm.
that will be one of that'll fit in that category of like another sort of nice, not unctuous, but like a little sweetness that you get from oak that'll be a positive influence. But well, we won't know until we taste it next year.
Yeah, I'm excited to see more of those hit the market for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to, so we're kind of bouncing around now. I want to circle back to St. Lucia Distillers for a second because you were talking about Laurie Barnard kind of, being a visionary and like one of the things that I've noticed with them that have been kind of like, wow, they were so ahead of the curve on that, was the sugarcane development. For this molasses-based rum distillery, planting sugarcane, finding ways to also use sugarcane juice as a blending component. I feel like we're seeing more rum producers making investments in sugarcane cultivation. In some cases, it's someone like Foursquare, for example, who wants to use cane juice as a blending component. Then you also have Mount Gay kind of building their own sugar refinery so they can have more of their own, estate molasses, that kind of thing. Um, St. Lucia Distillers has been, doing this for several years now. And I wanted to see, like, do you see sugarcane production, cultivation growing in the coming years? What kind of long-term plans does the distillery have for that? Or is it always just going to be kind of, a little small, minor blending component, or do you see it developing into something much bigger than it is now?
I think it'll always be small, like
Okay.
minute. We did already triple the size of the sugarcane that we had. When we acquired SLD, we had 5 acres under sugarcane. Now we have 15.
Okay.
Hmm.
But that's
15 is still small. So I see what
15
you
is
mean. Yeah.
But it's
15
three
is
times what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. So it's 15 is minuscule. So that's only allowed us to obviously increase our sugarcane distillation by threefold, I guess. We can't expand any further than that unless we bought a little bit more property, which we are trying.
Okay. Sure,
And
that's
we're
always tricky on, a small island.
when we bought St. Lucia Distillers, we did buy some adjacent lands and
Okay.
some of that for that sugarcane. And like I said, it's owned by the government, so it's just a question of getting the government to release. But it's all agricultural land. It's not for development. You know, it's actually fairly wet land.
Hmm.
You have the Roseau River that kind of cuts through it. But we bought some extra land which we're going through a major investment at the distillery now. The first phase of the investment was into again retooling and just bringing newer modern equipment to the distillery as well as more of it. We've built so far 2 aging warehouses, cellars as well, and there's another one coming on the way, plus another warehouse for storage of dry goods and whatnot, and then some upgrades needed in the
Hmm.
distillery. And then where we needed the extra land was that we also are investing into a tourism program to properly welcome guests and visitors to the distillery. It's the only distillery on the island
Right.
with like 1 million tourists coming every year.
Hmm.
People are going to want to go to the rum distillery anyway. Typically, I mean,
Hmm.
by accident, I think they receive 40 or 45,000 people, and it's not very well organized or set up.
Hmm.
That's probably not fair. I hope my friends in St. Lucia aren't saying that, but it's not. It's not as nice as it could be, and that's something that we do very well in Martinique. In Martinique, you have almost 10 smoking distilleries, particularly with if you count the new craft, we've been
Even
bit
when
by
you
the
can't
craft
see the
bug.
smoke, you can still call
That's
them
right.
smoking, right?
That's right.
Exactly. So anyway, that's something we do very well because I guess people, it's more, there is a route to Rome, there is a a more organized trail to
Yeah.
go and check out all the distilleries. But anyway, in St. Lucia, the idea is that we'll be able to welcome more and more guests, even visitors from cruise lines who are only there for the day and they want to check it out. So more to come when you see St. Lucia. That you'll see the distillery, and as well as the overall educational experience, the visitor experience is going to be dramatically improved. But this question was about sugarcane, and so we only we have 15 acres of sugarcane now. We still use the same. Practically, it is machine, but it's hand fed. So it's the still very old sugarcane mill that Laurie brought in, which I think he bought used. He never bought anything new. But we've that's been there at least 20 years. Laurie started using sugarcane simply because he wanted to propagate his own proprietary yeast from sugarcane. So
Interesting. Okay.
he brought sugarcane clippings from Barbados, planted them there, with the only intention was for the yeast, the natural field yeast from the sugarcane, to make his own, and which is today the yeast that we use for all of the product that we would release as an aged rum, any aged product. Otherwise, we use a commercial yeast for the high proof rums that are like Denros, or the rums that we use for the creams and the liqueurs and things like that. So he successfully, created his own sugarcane proprietary field yeast from that sugarcane, and then so he only needed the little 5 acres for that. And then as he had the sugarcane, he was always wanted to experiment and play with stuff. And Martinique being his neighbor to the north, he knew about agricole rum. So he just tried to start with the 5 acres, crushing sugarcane. It takes with only 5 acres, it would take only a few days, I guess. It's all cut by hand, and they would crush it, and they were using pot stills. Always the John Doerr one, which is the smallest pot still, and then a little bit of bendo for different flavor. And they started doing that in the mid 2000s. Moving forward, to get more of that sugarcane rum, as we are going to be, always trying to produce more and more rum, we need to kind of keep the ratios somehow online. But like really, the sugarcane juice rum is really a salt and pepper element or component to our blends. It's the main focal point. It's just a little bit of a added, spice, pepper, salt to your food.
It's the Emerald Lagasse. Bam.
Yeah,
put it in.
That's it.
Spiribam.
Bam.
That's it.
Oh wow, we went there. Another thing that might be able to serve as kind of a salt and pepper component, when we had Margaret Montplaisy and Denny Duplessis on the show, it was about 2 years ago. Margaret shared that they were just getting into high ester rum production, which she said had long been another one of Laurie Barnard's, pet projects that he wanted to get to someday. And I think you mentioned Lennox at the distillery, who is, interested in that sort of thing as well. I wanted to just check in and see, around 2 years later, any updates on that, and if might be sprinkled into a blend anytime soon.
Unfortunately, no updates. Like I said, so yes, Laurie was curious about all of the different types of things you can do with rum, and shared that with Lennox, and Lennox always had that curiosity, and has had an itch to scratch. But we can't produce rum fast enough as we are today. We can't produce rum that meets the demand from the distillery today for the brands. Plus, we're going through all of these investment and upgrade overhauls. So there hasn't been a lot of time or energy left over to do some innovation or to do other sort of development to create the facilities necessary to do that yet. But it is there. It's just tabled as an idea, and I think that when we're done with the the tourism part of the distillery and everything is kind of set into place, and we have everything that we have on the drawing board, underway, then you can maybe potentially see something like that. It goes totally to the ethos and the philosophy behind Sherman's being the art of blending, that we should be able to continue to press the envelope further and continue to bring more flavors, more characters, more aromas to the blending team to work with, to challenge them even further.
So you casually mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I feel like it's kind of a breaking news story, and I don't want to bury the lead with it, which is another distillery was recently added to your portfolio, Saint-Maurice from French Guiana, right? Which makes La Belle Cabresse and some other brands. So hoping you can tell us a bit about how that came together and what we might be able to expect from that in the future. And is that going to be coming to the U.S. market? I know some Spiribam portfolio does not make it to the U.S. market, so I wanted to ask about that in particular.
Yeah, well, it's so new, John. But to answer your question, simply put, was that's another distillery not at all equipped to produce enough rum for the local demand. Not able to keep up with the local market, and what basically had happened was that it opened up the market to other rums, first and foremost from the French Caribbean, so Clément and like Damoiseau from Guadeloupe, for example, and other rums from Guadeloupe and Martinique would come in, and we're growing and we're doing quite well, just because they were filling the void of what the local distillery could produce. And the family, the owners, the director at the time, or now, he's into his 70s, and basically, from what I can understand, is that basically at the end of his life cycle, very tired, was not going to put any more investment into the distillery, or to try to do what needed to be done to keep up the production, keep up what was going on, even with the brand, to continue to innovate and to accelerate the brand further, or to do anything with it. And so, that's where we come involved.
Yeah.
And we're again, it's a project that's really, so to answer your question, I don't think it's coming to the United States anytime soon. It's mainly the same. If you can sort of see a theme here, there's going to be a tremendous amount of work that has to be done in the distillery just to get it to produce at the level of quality that it needs to, and the quantity, I guess, it needs to reach the local market demand. And then, as well as, the next step would naturally be to go to the French market, where that is the largest French rum agricole market in the world. And we have enough to do with Clément and J.M here. So, but when rum agricole as a category is a little bit more better established, why not share with the American enthusiasts of rum agricole that we could potentially bring them some rum from French Guiana?
No, that makes total sense. And like you were saying, I'm starting to see the theme across how you develop and figure out ways to make this viable as it goes forward. Let me ask you then real quick about Arcane, the Mauritian rum brand. I know that's been a little bit longer, but I know we haven't seen that in the U.S. market. Is that something that is starting to take shape yet, or is there still more to go?
With Arcane, it hasn't come to the United States yet. We could bring it over whenever we really wanted to. On that note, though, I feel that the American rum consumer still struggles with Mauritius on the whole. Like, know where
don't even know where it is, right?
Yeah. With all due respect, all my American friends out there, I mean, but Mauritius is another, an island quite literally on the other side of the world. And the Mauritius rums that I see here in the market, where there are a few small expressions, they're great. I think people that get them, they collect them because they are rums that you don't see every day. And, they could have their own unique flavor profile. And I think they see them as kitschy, as far as collector. What I don't see is a lot of people like reaching for, hundreds of bottles of Mauritius rum. Yeah,
sure. Right. It's more like, I need to get something from Mauritius because I don't have anything else from there. It's like a rum catalog item, sort of.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm glad you get what I'm saying is because it's one bottle that you're gonna put in your closet and never look at again. And I don't want it to be like that. And maybe we could be doing better ourselves if we were to bring in Arcan and to try to do that. But that is probably too much of a tall order for us to do with everything we're doing already with Clément and J.M and Chairman's.
Well,
Yeah. What? Go ahead.
go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say to follow that up with agricole specifically, as you've mentioned kind of a couple of times of where the U.S. market is as a whole with agricole. What are the next few key things you need to see or that you feel needs to happen in that market? Obviously, more sales, but like, how are we planning the next, I don't know, 5 years of getting that to reach that level? Is there things you have in mind overall as general ideas?
Um, it's really based by feeling. It's a great question, but it has to be really based by feeling. And the good news is that sales are growing every year. Um, and
Love to hear it.
there's not like a threshold that we need to like hit before we trigger. Okay, this is the next thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really based.
Unlocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really based by feeling on the whole. But and we've come a long way.
I agree. Yeah.
We've come a long way. So I can't. I have to say we have to acknowledge that. No, so no, it's onward and upward. I can't not mention the fact that it's been really darling to see what's happened with mezcal as well as other agave distillates not named
Hmm.
tequila.
Hmm.
And I would say that if we could see that type of interest and enthusiasm that mezcal and other agave spirits are enjoying come into and pollinate the agricole category. I'm really not trying to make a comparison between the two, but I mean, but if
I mean, it makes sense.
that would be, I would say that would be a blueprint that we're
Mm-hmm.
follow.
Yeah.
On the note of growing enthusiasm for rum agricole and other cane juice rum styles from around the world in the US, um, I mean, we've just been seeing not only more and more rum agricole in the US market, but more and more cane juice distillates, cane juice rums, they
Yeah.
go by a laundry list of names. And I imagine from your perspective as someone, who got into this because it was like, let's bring Rhum Clément back to the US, this one brand. I imagine seeing the growth and how far it's come is really cool. And even maybe seeing some of those other styles of cane juice rum getting appreciation as well, as kind of, a rising tide lifts all boats sort of thing. But it can also perhaps introduce challenges, for example, things that are not agricole being called agricole, both by producers sometimes and consumers just kind of getting confused as well. So what I wanted to ask was how can brands from different rum making traditions kind of elevate the cane juice category together while also educating consumers on what makes them distinct from one another, like a Charanda from a rum agricole, for example, or something like that.
Yeah, so the Toronto, for example, that's a good one. But on the whole, I think that I really do believe that people need to talk about what they do and how they do it for themselves, and not try to mimic or borrow or steal
Mm-hmm.
the what are culturally uh, protected in some cases, but just culturally processes of producing rum. So getting to rum agricole, I buy in and I fully believe that rum agricole should only show up on a label if it's coming from the French overseas territories, which is exactly, or not just French overseas territories, but that are identified and protected by the European Union. So that is um, Martinique and Guadeloupe and French Guiana, and then you have Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean, and then
Mm-hmm.
you actually have Madeira, some islands
Right.
of Madeira in Spain. And the European Union recognizes those islands as Ron Agricola from the Spanish islands first, and Ron Agricole from the French overseas territory.
Hmm.
Outside of that, you could say sugarcane juice rum, you could say Charanda, you could say anything that's specific to your own ways. But what I don't think is fair is when you just see rum agricole thrown on a label, and you see that from a lot of U.S. American distilleries, and I've done my part, I believe, on a private level, just to send some notes and some messages to say, hey,
Yeah.
have a deeper thought into that, because you're imitating something that is kind of hard for you to do. There's microflora and fauna and terroir specific elements, from soil to tropical weather to rain to sun to wind, everything that makes rum agricole from that specific area what it is. One of the most egregious, like most insulting that I've ever seen was when somebody told me that they were making rum agricole, and I said, I don't just like, please walk me through your process, because from where you tell me your distillery is, I just don't think it's possible to grow sugarcane there. Oh no, of course we can't grow sugarcane there.
You just use the evaporated stuff, right?
I take sugarcane granular crystals or something like that. I mean, granulated sugar could mean sugar. It's like, yeah, sugar, but evaporated cane juice, which is shipped to me in crystals, and then I add water and I bring it back to juice, and then I distill from it. Like, I mean, what? And I got a little cheeky with him. I was like, what's the difference of me getting like a box of brown sugar from the grocery store and adding water and making my own rum like you? Oh no, you can do that. No, I can't.
Right.
So I mean, like, a lot happens to sugar when you process it into sugar. When a lot happens to this sugar when you process it from sugar cane and sugar cane into sugar and molasses, which is, for better or for worse, it is what it is. And by the way, we own a molasses-based distillery. We you make great rums from molasses, and
yeah,
which is a different thing. But I think rum agricole is you have to really respect the culture, the time-honored traditions that went into doing that. And within rum agricole, there's already enough strife as far as restrictions and trying to produce and grow and develop and remain respectful and carrying on the traditions, as well as the identifiable flavor profile and character aromas that are specific to what is rum agricole. And when for better or for worse, somebody else picks up a rum that comes from a different part of the world that you can't produce rum agricole in, you could easily mislead the consumer, and really, it's a disrespect to the producers who have been doing it for hundreds of years, because you're misleading and you're imitating in a poor way. Potentially, maybe you're doing a great job, I don't know, but it's not rum agricole. So it's like the imitation is not flattery, it's really disrespectful, and that it really can change the profile and change the opinion of a customer of what is rum agricole. I mean, it's protected with Scotch. The Scotch Whisky Association is very, very strong, where you can't say I don't know, Oregon Scotch whiskey, you can't say Indian Scotch whiskey. It's protected with champagne. You can't just throw champagne on a label. It has to come from the Champagne region. Unfortunately, I told you, in Europe it's well protected. So these producers, if you're producing, I guess if I'm going to be picking on American domestic craft rum distilleries here, if they have rum agricole on their label, if they ever want to export and sell their bottles in Italy or France or Belgium,
call it something else,
Germany, they can't. They have to change their label.
Yeah.
So why even bother to develop your brand like that if you already know that you're in the wrong? Legally, in some parts of the world, you're in the wrong. Now, here in the United States, unfortunately, we're a little antiquated, and if you go to the other spirit categories, you go to brandy, and then you get into cognac and armagnac. It's very simple. You see right there on the TTV website, the cognac, it says, brandy distilled from grapes grown in the cognac region. It gives you a website to say, for more information about what is cognac, reference the B and IC, or armagnac or Calvados. And that's all I'm asking for in the TTB for rum. Right now, rum is a derivative of sugar and sugarcane and molasses, or sugar derivative, whatever. But we're on the same shelf with everybody else, from Bacardi to Captain Morgan to Blue Chair Bay, to which are all great brands. But to Zacapa, to Diplomático, to everybody. But like, the point is that all of these rums aren't very similar to each other. That's the point I'm trying to make. And that I think the rum category is as deep and as wide and as vast as the whiskey category, but seems to be that people have a much easier time to be able to distinguish between what is Scotch whiskey and what is bourbon.
Right.
And even with the Scotch, you have single malts and you have like Speyside, Highland, and Islay and what have you, and then you have blended Scotch. And then even if you want to go through the whole whiskey map, between Japanese whiskey to Canadian whiskey to
Yep.
American whiskey to Irish whiskey, they all are. If you go into a store, they're all basically stacked up next to each other, and so you can shop the Irish whiskey aisle, you can shop the bourbon aisle, you can shop the Scotch whiskey aisle, and typically a Scotch drinker is not a bourbon drinker, and vice versa. But in the rum aisle, it's a mess.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then when you get into agriculture, like I think more brands makes more business, and more business makes more business. That's great. I think that rising the tide to float all the boats. I fully believe in all of that, but there has to be there's a line of where you can't cross to remain fair. Not to me, me personally, but I don't have much to do with it. But I'm talking about ancestors and family and families, not just my family, but people who put blood, sweat, and tears into their own brands, into their own way of producing rum. Where somebody who is a .com trustafarian who wants to throw sugarcane from South America into a still that he has in I don't know, Nebraska, it's not the same.
Lizard's breath rum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wizard
Yeah.
Breath Rum.
Yeah. I just got that .com address, by the way. So now I'm just
One thing I wanted to circle back to real quick. You mentioned, there can be a little bit of strife and debate on, certain regulations within the Martinique AOC and stuff like that. And there's always, there've been tons of conversations about GIs and everything with rum over the years. We're seeing some new ones come into being, and a lot of times people have the concern of, whether a GI will be too restrictive or anything. The AOC, it's been around since the 90s. Is that correct?
1996.
Yeah, 96. So you've had some time, a few decades to sit with it, to marinate with it. What do you think it does really well? And are there certain things about it that you do find frustrating or that you wish were different in some way?
What it does well is a little bit what we talked about as far as what does it do well as a protected as a really protected origin. I think it is a leader, it's a mentor to what other regions are trying to do. I don't think it's I think you have your you have your own origin, but and then you have your own style, and I think those two things. I think those are two different things, but they are intertwined, kind of also as one and the same. So I do like the protection of the traditional flavor profile. That when you see rum agricole on a label and you see the AOC on a label, that you have a good understanding of what you should be able to expect as far as a flavor profile, character, aroma, what have you, and that you should feel very confident that you can spend the money that you're going to spend and get a good bottle of rum. You may not love it, but you're not going to get a piece of trash. It's going to be really good, and you're going to have a fairly good understanding, expected flavor profile. So I like that part of it. What I don't like about it, I don't know. I don't find it terribly restrictive. I like the challenge that all of the producers have, that they have to create their own identity and they put their own thumbprints on their bottles within what I still believe is a fairly wide open category of innovation and exploration. I don't like some of the very nitpicky sort of small details that can discourage certain pieces of the innovation, which just doesn't make sense. These are just small little like sort of loopholes or nuances that some people can kind of get around, and if you want to or what have you, but I just don't see how it brings that any added value. And I'm just talking about, I don't know, like what you can, I'm not trying to say like, flavored rums or anything like that, which is totally prohibited, but staying within culturally type of, like for, I don't know, we make Creole shrub, for example, we use cane spirit in the rum, but we're not allowed to say that we use rum agricole in the rum.
Oh, really?
Because you can't use the word rum agricole if you're going to add like sugar or flavors and all those things. So we use cane spirit in the rum.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, guys, we all know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like those, but like, but I can live with all that, right? But it can be I don't know, certain little details. You know, you're not allowed to use like two basically AOCs together on the same label. So for example, when we did the J.M Calvados finish, Cognac finish, Armagnac finish, those were not AOC Martinique rums because the two AOCs canceled themselves out. I mean, that's not exactly why, but basically that's what it is. You're not allowed to. Yeah, I mean, it's very much of a straightforward framework. So, but ultimately, that doesn't discourage us from doing anything outside of the AOC rum agricole category. We still produce the way we produce, but when we do those type of releases, we're releasing them for the benefit of the brand and not benefit of the AOC, for example. So, we believe that our Rhum J.M fans will buy that Rhum J.M Calvados finish because it's Rhum J.M, and we've decided to try to do this Calvados finish, and the fact that it doesn't say AOC Martinique Rum Agricole on the label anymore, I don't think it prohibits anyone from buying the bottle. If it does, then so be it. More for us.
Yeah. I've been thinking about something recently. This is kind of a sharp turn, but go with me here. Food pairings and spirits, I've been thinking about a little bit. And I feel like with your background of wine and beer, as you mentioned, and then also a lover of great food and culinary arts, you'd be the perfect person to talk about this with. Why do you think there isn't as much attention or just association would be a good word with food pairings with spirits, particularly rum, but any spirits, when there is with wine and beer?
I think because of acid.
Interesting. Okay. And
I think you need acid to make a good food pairing. You need other things to make a good food pairing, but and spirits do contain some acids, but not to the same level like that you have with beer and wine.
Right.
I see.
But you have, but that doesn't mean that you can't do food pairings. It's just that because of the question of acid, I think you are, you're a little bit more pigeonholed, or you're a little bit more
limited.
Yeah, limited. I do like food pairings with rum and cocktails, but more so with rum or with spirits. But I find that they are successful when you are cooking with the same product or at least something similar. So it's really nice when you can enjoy the rum on the side and pair it. But I'm not, I wouldn't be saying like, oh, I love how I'm drinking Clément VSOP and I can pair it with the fattiness I'm getting out of the salmon from I don't know, from Alaska.
Yeah.
That's I mean, I can enjoy a glass of rum and put together, but like I'm not picking up these things. But if someone were to make like I don't know, a Caribbean sort of jerk sauce for that salmon using the Clément VSOP with some other fruits and some nut or whatever, or some spices, and I'm like, oh, I can really taste the Clément VSOP in my hand, and it's really now it's bringing
echoed
up sort of echo the flavors of the sauce or whatever. And you can do that with salads and all this stuff. So I've done some food pairings and rum for sure, and even with cocktails. And so cocktails bring that acid, and so cocktails can bring that acid, and you can bring some fruits and stuff like that. And so I like cocktails when you pairing with food again, trying to use the acid to cut through the fat on the food side, or vice versa, trying to get some fattiness into from your spirit or from your cocktail that's cutting through some of the acid that's in the food. And it depends on if you're if you're talking about first course with vegetables and fruits and the proteins in the middle to desserts and all this stuff. And rums actually usually rum and spirits do tend to do very well with the dessert courses,
right?
As a pairing, even neat, because you're able to in rums you start to get a lot of raisins and dates and some vanilla notes. So you get a lot of these type of flavors, coffee notes that are in the spirits that are in the rum that will typically appear in dessert courses.
Yeah.
So that's usually a little easier.
So it's more of an amplification than a complementary type of thing. I
Right.
see what you're getting at. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, I appreciate that.
Well, now that we've
You
been
guys
able,
I thought this was supposed to be an easy one. I'm on the grill.
now that we've, well, I think one of John's original ideas was to throw you some rums and suggest what to pair them with, but we'll spare you from that because I think we've gotten the idea that it's a little bit more difficult and not quite as straightforward as a wine, for example. But
But the best was I got challenged. I've done it now twice in my, I don't know, 18, 19 year career, I guess. Pairing with cigars, and I'm not a huge cigar smoker, so so I was doing it by smell, and also talking with a humidor a lot. But yeah, doing it by smell, and it was fun. You get some orange notes and whatnot. I mean, I'll smoke a cigar here and there, but when I'm smoking a cigar, I can't taste anything. So
yeah, I just actually recently I was talking with one of our listeners who is a cigar smoker and was asking because I've smoked cigars here and there over the years, but I'm not a regular cigar smoker, and I know that pairing rum with cigars is something some people do, but I've literally never experienced it. So I'm gonna try to do it for the first time sometime in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see how it'll go. Well, Ben, we've covered all the distilleries, we've covered food, we even got cigars a little bit there at the end. There's only one thing left for us to do, which is our special bonus segment on the Rumcast. And I wanted to tell you in advance, I'm not sure if you heard it, but Kiowa Bryan, who works with you, delivered probably a top three performance on the rapid fire round of questions on the Rumcast of all the guests we've had. She was very great, very quick with her answers. She sang briefly in one of her answers.
That's
which was
right.
Great.
Yeah. I'm not going to try to keep up with you. She's an insanely talented lady.
Okay, so even if you aimed for just doing like slightly worse than she did, you'd still do really, really well. So, but this is our bonus segment of questions created by my co-host John Gulla. John, is there anything you want to share? Rules, anything like that before we get started?
No rules really, Ben, but we try to keep them short for this. We're going to get to as many of these as we can within roughly a minute. We'll say big time roughly, and just get through as many quick answers. There's no right, there's no wrong. You can say whatever you want, be as silly or as serious as you like.
Okay, let's go.
All right, I'm going to put 60.
That's the right answer, right?
Approximately.
By the way. Let's go is the right answer to start. Okay.
All right, I've got 60 seconds and go.
All right, Ben, neat or on the rocks?
Neat.
Column, pot, or blend?
Blend.
All right, aged or unaged?
Unaged.
That has to be tough for you. Okay, unaged. Molasses or cane juice? That one not as tough for you, I think.
Come on.
I don't know. He's got SLD in the portfolio too.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're kind of screwed with that one. All right. With the surname Jones, do you have a dog or a pet named Indiana?
No.
You should. I mean, or like I don't know, like Benjamin Jones and the Forgotten Casks of St. Lucia just sounds right to me. So, all right, your favorite person to share a bottle of rum agricole with?
A bottle? A whole bottle?
You don't have to finish the whole bottle.
No, my uncle Noel Mela.
Okay. Kiwa taught us how to pronounce Rhum J.M. in the French way last time, but I wanted to see, can you also pronounce it again? Because I'm just not sure the way it needs to be said. Can you say, how does it get pronounced?
Well, with my congested nose, it's going to be easier. Rhum J.M.
Okay. Rhum J.M. Now, if it was literally Rhum G.M. as in the letter G.M., how would you say that then in French?
Rhum J.M.
Got it. Okay, got it. Is it true that the John Doerr 1 and John Doerr 2 still names are lovingly referred to by distillery employees at SLD as Little John Doerr and Big John Doerr Stud?
No, but we're going to start that tomorrow.
All right, perfect. I feel like it should be on the label there on it. Your go-to cocktail or mixed drink that's not a tea punch or a daiquiri?
And would be a rum old fashioned or a rum Zirac.
Okay.
Oh,
Rumzerac.
All right, we
I
have to
haven't heard of
circle
that
back.
one.
We have to
Yeah.
circle back to that because I love Sazeracs.
Yes. You've got now rums from 3 different island nations in the Caribbean, Martinique, St. Lucia, and Guadeloupe. It's almost like you were like Thanos collecting the Infinity Gems here. If you could socket 2 more island countries in the Caribbean into your gauntlet, which 2 are they?
The Caribbean,
Yes.
Jamaica, and maybe Dominican Republic.
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting that one.
that one.
Jamaica was given, but okay. All
They're
right.
doing great stuff and very different than what we do.
Have you ever been in the same room with Shaquille O'Neal? And if so, who is taller?
I've never been in the same room with Shaquille O'Neal, so I don't know.
But you're a pretty tall guy.
We can't say for sure who is taller than. They've never been in the same room together.
Yeah, no, he's much taller.
And finally, Rhum J.M. is named for Jean-Marie Martin, which makes sense, J.M. But if you look at the branding and the bottles for Rhum J.M., the period after the M is missing. It's branded as J.M. What happened to the period after the M?
It's French. You'll never know.
That
is a great answer. Okay. All right. I'll leave it there.
I'm glad you asked that because I've been wondering that too because my day job, I write a lot. So I usually notice little weird things. And I've always noticed that when the company, Rhum GM writes it out, they only use 1 period. And everyone else, I feel like if you see it in a magazine article or whatever, they use 2. And I'm always like, why only the 1?
The French thing, you wouldn't get it.
No,
right.
That's what I
have a theory.
I chalk it up to.
I have a theory, though, and this is totally probably the wrong theory, but my theory is, as I was researching how to say Rhum GM with a French accent, I used the Google Translator and I put it in. And when I did that, it said G Monsieur, because apparently M period means Monsieur as the abbreviated form. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it has something to do with, no, it's not J.M. Monsieur, it's Martin. So you can't put the period after it. Never mind. It's. I'm not French enough.
So
I won't
you're saying
understand.
like M period in French is like MR period in English?
Yes. So weirdly, it wouldn't pronounce it for me unless I took the period away, and then it did it right. So there you go. That's my prevailing theory. Yes, but apparently, as Ben said, I'm not French enough to understand.
Yeah, but when they decided to do that on the label, Google Translate didn't exist.
That's true.
That is good point. There goes that theory. Thanks, Ben.
I don't think they were consulting Google Translate when they were branding.
Good point. Can't refute that. Well, Ben, before we let you go, anything we didn't get to, anything coming down the pipeline from any of the many brands in the Spiribam portfolio that you want to give people a heads up on?
No, I just say stay tuned. It's going to be another year. There should be another expression or another rum to show you guys.
Awesome.
Right. Well, we will look forward to it excitedly. Thanks again for being on the show.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Honestly, it was fantastic. I love you guys, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
All right, thanks everyone so much for listening to another episode of the Rumcast. If you have any questions about this episode, any thoughts on all things Spiribam, the whole portfolio, it's a big portfolio now, it's growing, there's lots of stuff going on. We'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, reactions. Please send us an email, host@rumcast.com. That's HOST@rumcast.com. We love getting emails from listeners. It's always great way to catch up, interact. We appreciate them, so keep them coming. But if you don't like email, if you're not old-fashioned like I am, John, where can they find us online?
Yeah, if you're not, part of that older crowd like Will, who, has to stick to email, doesn't use social media, stays above the fray, then you can do that. But if you're like me, if you're hip, if you're young, if you're on all the social media web atmosphere and all that.
You definitely sound hip right now. Way to talk yourself up. Where do they go on the web hip atmosphere thing?
They're gonna go to hold on. That was pretty much the worst ever. They're gonna go on social media on the Rumcast at the Rumcast and Instagram and Facebook. Jesus Christ, this is not my week. Yeah, of course, you're going to go on social media to Facebook or Instagram at the Rumcast. You can find us there. You can direct message us through there if you have a shorter thing you want to share with us, or you can just leave a comment. Leaving comments is fine. We actually had a lot of comments this week on the Facebook group for people talking about the blind Foursquare test too,
Yeah.
and bouncing off each other. So, don't be shy.
Don't
And
be
leave
shy.
a comment. It's fine. We're a nice group here. We foment
It's not the
conversation.
Ministry of Rum.
Oh man.
It's the end of the episode. No one will hear that anyway. Don't
That's
worry
right.
about it.
Yeah. So yeah, check us out there. If not, send us an email. But do touch with us. Let us know. We always love hearing from you. And if you've got any interesting things you want us to talk about, let us know that too. So hit us up. And thank you all so much for listening to us ramble on about crazy things and about rum as well. We appreciate you, and we always look forward to the Patreon happy hours, which there's one coming up, right?
That's right. There is one coming up at the end of this month. May 31st will be our monthly happy hour for our Cask Strength Rumcast patrons. Great group. We always have a blast on there. So if you'd like to share a virtual glass with us and the gang, go to patreon.com/the Rumcast. That's patreon.com/the Rumcast. We've got happy hours, bonus episodes, all kinds of stuff going on there. So a growing community. We'd love to see you there as well. And as always, we appreciate the support that we get from our patrons. But John, I think that's it for this episode. Until next time, I'll talk to you later.